One of the things about cryptocurrency is it is definitely the way that evildoers and people who want to, for example, sell arms, it's the currency through which they do it. So, like, do you have protections against that? Or are you like, nah, we trying to get our loot off of that too, man? He could be like, well, we just had conversations with Cobra Commander today. And then on the other side, we was talking to Destro, Megatron. Like, hey, are there any precautions that you take? Like, how does that function and factor into your architecture for how you put this out?
I want to answer that in two ways. One is I want to point out the amount of crime that has been committed with cash is far greater than it will ever be with digital in the next decade at least, right? And where I'm going with that is the banking partners that have facilitated these are legendary. We could go down the name roster right now, but that wouldn't be very productive for us going forward. When it comes to digital payments, and especially blockchain and cryptocurrency, it is the absolute worst method for crime payments because of the very nature of the technology.
The Black Futurist.
That's one small step for man.
Okay.
We have a very good friend of mine on the show today. This is Mer Walker. Mer is a designer, a writer, a producer, a strategic builder working on the intersection of culture, technology, and emerging financial systems. And Mer is focused on creating cultural capital engines for fellow artists, creators, collectors, and financiers to participate in more durable and sovereign cultural economy, building products with provenance, commerce, and stable finance infrastructure. Mer is also a graduate interaction design professor at Art Center College of Design, a former Boston Consulting Group principal, former chief product officer at Origin Foundation, and now founder of Superposition Velocity, parent company of Soq Wallet and Stable Fusion. Welcome aboard, my brother.
Great to be here, man. Been watching the podcast for quite a while now. And yeah, thanks for reading the very complex syllables there. But yeah, that's a good summary. Yeah.
Hey, man, we have to start from the beginning. All right, so how did we meet?
So while I was at BCG, I was doing a lot of side quests. And one of them was a venture startup for talent that I got asked to do by a large venture capital firm here. And one of my colleagues was a lady named Iana Caballo. And Iana was a graduate of
FAMU.
I was not going to try to say that. I was going to spell it out. But yes, that one. And great friend. And she said, hey, the platform that you're building, it has a first phase focus on Black America and Black professionals. You got to talk to this guy out of Howard. He's been doing a lot of what you're kind of wanting to do. Mm-hmm. And so we jumped on a call and you were gracious enough to listen to a very early stage conversation. And we've weathered that storm.
Yeah.
Still friends today.
you yada yada the whole lot, but yeah, that's exactly right.
I drove right past all the potholes.
That's so good. Hey, I'm not going to let you just come in here and talk about your new project. You're going to have to talk about some things. I want you to know.
Okay.
We talk every 2 weeks at a minimum, and there's a series also of Instagram DMs that come through and go both ways. There's a whole lot of conversation between the conversation. So we're going to talk about some things. But I want to start. Artemis 2. See Maurice's face just straighten up. Artemis 2. Go ahead, Mo. You do it. I won't have to do it.
What? I just want you to take one word out of what I know you're getting ready to talk about, because while these astronauts are going around the moon, mm-hmm. and during that flight path, they are carrying humanity farther than it has ever been away from planet Earth.
Right.
You rightfully reference the brother to Artemis, Apollo, and the very many Apollo missions that both went to the moon, landed on the moon, whatever have you. And you like to use one particular word when it comes to those Apollo moon missions.
Which is what?
Which is supposedly. which every time you say it, my eyes roll to the top of my head. My hand goes over my mouth. My head goes, I make like 8 different emojis that you can pull up on your phone every time you say the word supposed in front of all of the different missions from Apollo that have already been to the moon.
So let's pose it to our friend, my good friend Mer Walker. Do you believe that America put men on the moon in 1969?
I believe it is possible.
Okay, say no more. Say no more. He didn't put the absolute lines around either side of it, right? Either way, it's possible. Maurice won't even acknowledge that. It's absolutely right.
No.
They definitely did
I
it.
completely and totally reject Lemaire. You my man through my man. So we family already. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to smack a rib off your plate at the cookout because it ain't no potential or supposed or might have happened. It definitely happened. It happened repeatedly. I would love for the culture, which I'll circle back to later on. I would love for the culture and the community to let go of that conspiracy. We can keep Oprah and the KKK and Polo and all that kind of stuff, but man, the lunar landing hurt my soul.
Okay. Well, I will say this. One good thing about the Artemis 2 is that it's caused me to do some reading, and I learned about tidal locking. So tidal locking is why we don't see the dark side of the moon, quote unquote. I was always saying, like, I assumed the moon rotated and revolved like the Earth does around the sun. It does not. It rotates and revolves at a rate which we always see the one side. Like the backside is always the backside. It spins one time for every time it goes around the Earth, which means we never see the back of it. It's crazy. Like it's always facing us. So that's interesting.
Set up that way.
I do want to add a little rejoinder to Mo's offer to remove a rib from my plate. The thing I would want to make sure I'm clear on with my response is I said the word possible.
Possible. It might have happened.
Or it might not. And this is where I think we have to do our best where we are with what we have to decipher what we're being presented, which goes to a lot of things we're going to talk about here, from tech stuff to kind of culture. But I want to ask y'all a question. So Blue Origin flight with the ladies.
Yeah.
What were your takeaways from that?
That Gail should have worked out before she got involved in this whole situation. I don't know what she was doing. Coming out of that thing, man. She ain't doing no squats. I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know how Blue Origin really moves us forward beyond those old airplane flights, the zero-G flights. It's the same principle. You're not really going into superior orbit. You're going into super low Earth orbit and coming in a constant descent, which is fast enough for you to experience zero-G. Cool. I guess the question is, why all women? Why these women? And I know Aisha Bowe, she's a former NASA person, so that's cool. What in particular are your questions? Rephrase it or add to the question so we can loop further.
I can give you an answer to what you said, and then I would love to also hear you add some detail as well. I think the ultimate takeaway for me is that we got an opportunity to see the equivalent of just regular people, not trained astronauts, go really high above the Earth, which hopefully portends that eventually, like in For All Mankind, which we may touch on, that space flight becomes something that is not just limited to people who have had, months and months of training, who are engineers and who are, pilots and military trained and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's supposed to give us some hope that any of us will one day be able to get on a flight and travel to the moon colony.
Okay. Where you at with it, Walker?
I am challenged with some of the details of the landing in particular and how that was, let's say, presented.
Mm-hmm.
And it just left me with a lot of questions as to why. Why was that so casually done? In particular, around what Mo was talking about is the future of that kind of travel experience, that didn't look like that was well orchestrated. And I just wondered why. And it just made me start to ask a lot of questions. And I really adore Aisha, right? I had a really great time interviewing her for that project.
Yep.
And, there was another lady on there, Amanda, who I didn't get a chance to meet yet, but I know of her. And, I've had projects with Jet Propulsion Laboratories. That was some of my first things out of grad school. And, it made all the difference in the world to me. But there were a lot of questions that I had about how private operators have operated these types of things, and having known some of the guys from the early days of, working with some of the guys that were doing Yuri's Night at Caltech, and the kind of early days of Space Adventures, or forget the exact name, but it ended up becoming Virgin Galactic. So the guy that runs that, or ran that for a while, is now a congressman, George. Know a lot of those folks and kind of saw some things. So when I saw that one, I was like, well, that's different.
Yeah.
It's not what I saw with, Virgin Galactic, and how they really ran things the way they ran it when they were doing similar types of flags. So anyway, I was just curious to throw that out there because of
Talk about the contrast between that flight and the ill-fated submarine Titanic joint. Was there a Logitech controller involved in either or both?
To my knowledge, it was only the ill-fated and improperly named jerry rig sub experience that had a Logitech controller involved.
It's one of those things that, so when you talk about NASA and you talk about space travel and you watch the space shuttle land, as we are all men of a certain age who've seen that, there's something that comes along with the bureaucracy of government, which we, of course, get frustrated and tired with. There's a hyper regulation that comes along with it, and a normalization that comes along with it, to where you don't see a landing, like to your point, Lemaire, a landing that looks kind of like, what? Right? And you can get why they let Gail stumble around, right? Like and so when you have privatization, you've got very different regulations. You've got two different companies that have different ideas. One that would put people in a submarine, and they're going to have the Logitech controller that you could order off of Amazon and get to your house today. And the other one is going to dig into the regulations and the things that NASA uses, and is going to be, minus the bureaucracy of a government agency, be more close to a sort of regulation that gives us the normal experience, I would even just say the confidence that, like, hey man, can y'all land me if I go up there too? Because part of the Blue Origin joint was like,
Exactly.
You say men of a certain age, which brings me to the first part of our journey into why we asked Lemaire here today. When I was a young tyke, we had freedom. We had a very analog life compared to the people today, right? Just be home before the streetlights come on. But what really expanded my horizons and my radius was what? Bicycle. You get on your bike, you go as far as you want. Just make sure you're back home in time. But we also didn't have, Lululemon and other like traveler style shorts and things. So sometimes if you were going to ride to the store or something, you had to put your money where?
In the sweaty sock.
In the gym sock. Which brings us to the point. My brother Mer Walker has recently launched his platform called Soq Wallet. He named it Soq Wallet. I'll let you tell it. But I think somewhere in there it touches on that story.
One of the three pillars that athletic activities, wanting to be able to put stuff in your sock without ruining it, is definitely an inspiration. That's ultimately coming from a perspective around privacy and kind of nimbleness that I really like having access to in my life whenever I want it. The third and second part are about a reference to the souk market model in the Middle East, where you have very direct and very peer-to-peer economic activities going on. And it might be any number of different categories of products and goods and just essential things in life that are cultural in nature, right?
Mhm.
And then the second part is related to one of the first collaborators that I've been working with for quite a while, Paul Frank, and his first set of creations were sewing socks with his grandmother. And that's actually how he learned how to, apply creative drawing translations over to apparel and now all kinds of different things. So it's a multi-layered
I
kind
love
of
it.
meaning set, but it's got all those elements. But the word wallet is key as well, in the sense that we're headed towards a financial future where the notion of your personal and professional and even, let's call it, treasury management is going to be done through a wallet of your choice. And that might be something that happens on a large banking surface, or it might be something that happens on a more private and cryptographic surface. But either way, the idea of this culture kind of being set up to operate in a sovereign way through a wallet is kind of the rejoinder on that.
So what is it? What is Soq Wallet? What is SOQWallet.com? Give us the high level and bring it down as low as you want.
Yeah, I mean, at the kind of yell out the window as I'm leaving the house to tell somebody what it is, it's
Susie, throw it out the window. Sue.
go to .com. It is a new type of e-commerce experience where you can buy art and collectibles, and they do things for you that you don't have to do anything to benefit from. So the idea is that there's a series of iconic creators that I'm working with who will be launching any number of different types of artwork and collectibles that'll be easy to buy in a traditional manner. Use a credit card. There's some advanced technologies that'll roll out in terms of agentic payments and all that for people who want to go in that zone. But in the middle is stablecoins and being able to use things like USDC to pay because you've got a wallet and you know what you're doing. You can already do that there. But over time, we're going to be showing up in people's AI searches. We're going to be showing up in people's agentic kind of acquisition strategies for acquiring collectibles and art. And then the third thing I would say about it is, this is about a capital engine being set up so that a lot of the things that I've seen over the last 15 years of watching a lot of experiments in blockchain and cryptocurrency and, things like, the dreaded acronym NFTs and what that all meant. There's a lot of lessons that I'm applying to building this first version out and having it bridge over to a platform called Stable Fusion that allows those artifacts that people are buying to become what we call composable, that you can actually do things with them in addition to them kind of passively working for you. You can put them into positions in very well protected financial instruments. So that's the 3-layer cake there.
Mo, do you have a wallet?
Physical, yes. And then I have wallet apps on my phone so that I can use NFTs.
Okay. So when's the last time you opened your wallet, Mo?
My physical wallet,
Yeah.
yesterday.
Well, not your physical money wallet. I'm talking about your crypto wallet. You have a crypto wallet? Is that the right term? Lemire?
I have some cryptocurrency. I look at it once every few months.
Okay. Great start. So, Lemire, here's Maurice. He has a couple digital wallets, probably got a MetaMask wallet, whatever. He doesn't really look at it. He's not doing a whole bunch of, putting the stuff to work. How do you address a person with that level of activity and bring them into Soq Wallet? And what are you telling them? What's the value of coming there?
So first I would say, come to experience and look at the artwork and see if it's appealing to own, and that you would want to buy something that becomes part of a collection that you can manage on the platform itself, as well as connect your current wallet to store it safely on there. So we have built out infrastructure that works across about 17 blockchains in terms of the asset being able to be housed on your favorite chain within that. And they're the top 17, of course, but you'll be buying some artwork or a collectible. It will automatically show up in a vault, which is effectively an account for you. You have the option of being able to connect your wallet to it and say, hey, send it to me at this address on Ethereum or on Solana or on SWI, whichever you like. And we'll still be able to see it because it's actually got chain key cryptography communicating from the parent chain, which in our case is Internet Computer Protocol. And so you'll be able to manage that and have it live on whatever address and chain that you like, or just let it sit in the parent chain, and it will passively earn a native token on the platform that is in the form of rewards. It comes with some of those as part of the initial purchase. But then if you decide, hey, I'd like to actually use some of the tools inside the vault to actually communicate things. So there's a meme engine that allows you to automate creating messages, and it's tied back to your wallet address. So we see that activity and we reward you for doing so. There is some more advanced infrastructure around trading that if you want to use, let's say Claude or Clawbot or one of those to actually do some trading strategies, there's plugins and infrastructure around that. And most importantly, there is the ability to just kind of click one button and say, yeah, I want to put this into a 6-month position inside Stable Fusion where it's earning yield in the form of stable coins because I've got X amount that I bought, and it's going to have a ratio of earnings that you'll receive for doing so. And you can choose whether you receive that monthly or you receive at the end of the duration that you chose. So that's the pitch, that you come for the art and you stay for the yield, right?
I don't know that you're explaining it like overtly that this is not like OpenSea. We're not talking about digital art. We're talking about in real life physical art, right?
100% we are. And OpenSea, Magic Eden, they're not doing this. This has always been part of my mission with doing things in blockchain, is that the physical, collectible, artwork, film, media, all the things that we grew up with and continue to want to see go forward in the future, they get amplified by the digital. They don't get overblown, right? And over extrapolated by either exploitation or by hype and let's say trader behaviors. So that the physical work is first and paramount, and where the value is established and will grow. And then these other things help you maintain that and be rewarded for being a good steward of it.
So I'm opening a browser tab right now, going to SOQWallet.com. When I go there, I see immediately a bunch of very recognizable Paul Frank work and a link that says I can either shop the collection or activate my assets. If I click on Paul Frank stuff, I can go in and I can see there's artwork here that I can buy. And I really like the one that has Fozzie Bear on it. That's cool. Click on that, Fozzius, and I can order it in 2 different sizes, and I can order it framed or unframed. If I go ahead and do this stuff gets sent to my house. And what else do I get?
So when it's shipped to you, there is going to be a series of communications that will give you status, as well as a bit of guidance around an owner's manual. You'll find in there that there's a certificate of authenticity for that specific work that has nomenclature around which edition you have and what the title of it is and the signature from Paul. And then it's also a line for what's called a digital provenance claim, which is effectively a claim that you'll enter into the activation interface once we get you into the vault. And so you've gotten that physically there, that's attached to the back of the work, and hopefully you'll be able to go ahead and display it, mount it. We'll have some information and possibly some recommended devices for you to use that don't destroy your wall and all the things. We'd love for you to take a picture of it and start kind of earning rewards by putting it up and putting in the code that comes with it. Once you receive it, we're going to receive a message back that, hey, it's a successful landing. And we're going to be able to say, hey, now you take this into the vault, make sure you have your order ID and your DPC, and go ahead and enter that in, and you can go into your account and it's going to show up there as part of your holdings. You'll have the digital receipt and the actual digital twin inside the vault. And then you can start activating it. You can start doing things with it. You can say, hey, I want to go ahead and put it in a position. I want to just earn rewards. I want to take that photo that I shot of it and post it on my social channels with a certain tag. And off you go, right? You're now able to experience and have that artwork there in your house, and you know that it's doing work for you. And down the line, there's going to be an AI buddy, effectively, that piece of work that you have, you can interact with it as you would as an LLM, and you can talk to it, and it will be the interface that you use to actually go and do some of the more advanced trading and other activities.
Maurice drives a Tesla. It very much reminds me of early EV conversations where they're like, look, if you buy the car and just hang on to it, don't mess it up. Let it keep on updating. Eventually, you'll be able to send this thing out at night when you're not driving it to let it go earn some money for you. Like, it'll be a taxi that Elon gets to, do all types of stuff with. This very much feels like that. It's like, if you just want the car, you could just have a car ride around in it. But if you want, there's a whole other layer. It's kind of like that. Am I right? Like, you can just have the art.
That is it exactly. That ownership in the modern era of an asset that could be very productive to you and for you and with you. We're here. We can have that now. So
what do you think, Mo?
Let me get inside first my Eric Killmonger brain.
Okay. Hey, Auntie.
Let's say positive. Exactly. So let's say positively then, one use of this could be understanding the exploitative nature of art museums and how often they take cultural artifacts, oftentimes by force, other times not necessarily through amicable ways, right? Is this potentially a way for someone to create a museum where they say, here are artifacts, but you get to visit this museum virtually, and then you license, if that's the proper term, your artwork that you have to appear in this virtual museum. And so now, again, let's say from the positive side, I'm also thinking as a school teacher. If I want my undergraduate students to be visiting as a part of an assignment, we license this museum. And so, or have a license to use this museum. And so now my students can look at the art, and then they can do assignments based on questions that we may ask them about that art. Is that something that could be done? Am I aiming way too low? How would you respond to that?
It's spot on in terms of several of the subsequent extensions that are more than possible and likely. So in 21, when there was all the NFT activity going on and Bryndan was roped into conversations around it, he was nice enough to not say, this is crazy and I don't want to do this, but he did listen. There were conversations we were having at Origin Foundation where I was working with a few museums of note, one here in LA that's going to open on May 4th, by the way, their new renovation. Yes, but no, actually, they're not actually making anything out of that, which I found. But the point I want to say, Mo, is that yes, the idea of we used to call it the metaverse, but the meta museum was the concept around being able to have these kind of digital holdings and the exhibition of them to give access in ways that hadn't been done before. So for instance, the museums are most interested in a very high fidelity capture of the 80+% holdings that they never actually show in the museum for the public to see. And so they wanted to be able to have a way to set up either subscriptions or experiential access for people to be able to see that and display that even in their homes on a digital kind of canvas if they wanted. So absolutely, I see that happening. And then there's still platforms that are standing, like gallery.so and a few others where they have that model where you kind of show the collections that you have across one, if not more, chains. And it's also a place where you can have peer-to-peer sales happen, but mostly it's about kind of giving people a sense of your collector kind of philosophy of the things that you've elevated to the level of worth and something to hold on to. So yeah, spot on.
Yeah. And look, so give you this, LeBear, like, he's like, just talk, like fam. My next question, okay, now I'm gonna put my Cobra Commander hat on, because one of the things about cryptocurrency is it is definitely the way that evildoers and people who want to, for example, sell arms on the dark web. It's the currency through which they do it. So like, do you have protections against that? Or are you like, nah, fuck it. We trying to get our loot off of that too, man. We selling missiles. We selling, we selling arms to anybody who wants it. I don't want to be like, he could be like, well, we just had conversations with Cobra Commander today. And then on the other side, we was talking to Destro, Megatron. We gonna get with all the evildoers. Are there any precautions that you take? Like, how does that function and factor into your architecture, for how you put this out?
I want to answer that in two ways. One is I want to point out the legacy and the behaviors of finance taken into the dark zones. What I mean by that is the amount of crime that has been committed with cash is far greater than it will ever be with digital in the next decade at least, right? And where I'm going with that is the banking partners that have facilitated these are legendary. We could go down the name roster right now, but that wouldn't be very productive for us going forward. But you know who they are, and you probably would discover some new ones. When it comes to digital payments, and especially blockchain and cryptocurrency, it is the absolute worst method for crime payments because of the very nature of the technology. So if you look at what just happened this past week, there's a big scandal in something called Drift, which these names always have a way of kind of telling you what's going to happen. So Drift is one of the larger decentralized exchanges on Solana blockchain. At one point, this last 6 months, it was what they call total value locked of 1.5 billion and all the big numbers that give people thrills, right? It's dipped since economic events have happened. But nonetheless, on April 1st, they sent out a message late at night and said, this is absolutely not an April Fool's joke. We are under attack. So much so that we're about $230 million out. And we're looking into this and we have to understand this, blah, 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 blah. What was happening was they were effectively being drained and converted over into USDC stablecoin and then over to Ethereum. So they were hopping. And what they discovered was that the messages that they had with a certain group of people who had put $1 million worth of their own currency in stablecoin and fiat into the system were front parties for the North Koreans. And so there were nation state actor level hacking, let's say, warfare elements going on with what was happening there. So on the one hand, you have actors like that are out there, and there are others who are actively kind of siphoning funds because a lot of startups just don't have the operational security and the protocols, and there's high trust, perhaps even over trust going on around something was supposed to be trustless, right? Mm-hmm. That you're supposed to be putting stuff into rock solid kind of computer smart contract AI, but it all got infiltrated by bad actors that have been pirates for all of mankind, right? And they figure out a way to get in there. So to wrap up, the way I'm looking at it is I've used in this first build some of the most regulated and backstop capable systems, from Stripe to PayPal to Coinbase to several of the main wallets, and how they all flow into a system that has gates where human in the loop moments have to happen to approve Bryndan transacting on the site, and that he is who he said he is when he used stablecoin to buy it through Stripe. And then the system said, hey, this one's ready to go. And then we have to look at it and say, yes, this is a real person. This is not a bot. They're not in a restricted territory and so forth. So there are deliberate kind of friction applications in my fulfillment flow, so that when we actually have people in the vaults and we know them there too, from a KYC standpoint, they want to be part of this community. They're safe with their information being encrypted so that it's not going out, but they're safe with it actually being in the system so they can be rewarded and that they're part of a community. So my take on it is it's just going to be a smaller community on purpose, and not trying to say, hey, we need to let the Visigoths in here and do what they do. We're just not going to do that. This is really at the culture kind of epicenter that I'm wanting to bring about. So I hear you, and it's a real thing. It certainly is a problem. You can also look at what Tether and USDC have done, which is they claw back funds repeatedly. They blacklist wallets repeatedly. And so there are controls around illicit activities. And maybe there's even, in some cases, too much oversight. But at this point, it's kind of a necessary evil.
This speaks to the genius of the one James Brown, who told Eddie Murphy that if you have $1 million, you need to bury it in the ground, or the government will take it.
Well, this has been recorded, so I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that part. I don't want to talk about that. They listening.
James was saying also, if you got that $1 million buried in the ground and the government don't know nothing about it, and you ain't got to pay no taxes. and Sam was like, oh, hell no, Mr. Brown. We're aware of every red cent you've ever buried in your backyard in South Carolina. We taxing you on that and them other holes that you buried too.
So why is Soq Wallet, how is it different from Shopify? And two-parter, when they see the success that you build with this Paul Frank collection and the success of selling that incredible art with the digital element behind it, how do you protect the process so you're not hit over the head and just cloned?
I don't think I can not be cloned in this age of AI and scraping and all that. Where I believe the value will last and the economic kind of, let's say, exchange is in the work, is in the actual creative, intellectual property-based artifacts. And so with Paul, I am a licensee of the parent brand out of Singapore that owns it and operates that. And we've gone through and do the quarterly tap dancing we have to do to make that all work out. And then the other creators that are coming on board are all, signature artists that when they create something, it's going on a new registry, which is what Soq Wallet is as well. And that going forward, it will be, IP and royalty managed for them with the system. So in terms of Shopify and any number of other systems that doesn't build with Shopify, even though I highly respect the hustle, right? Like they are the big player. There's nuances around how I wanted to be able to control at a deeper code level what's actually happening with this, for some of the reasons we just talked about with Mo, in terms of being able to control payment flows and transactions and other things down the line, particularly with the blockchain stack that's integrated. But I see them turning on all the things of today, right? They have their X402 payment infrastructure with Coinbase. They have a new AI embedded agentic system that's going to build elements for you and execute. I just have had a few hiccups with clients with them over the years that were pretty serious and I'm going to use the word draconian. It was just not they were not forgiving. They did not forget. And they were not gonna support. It
Right.
was chop. So that kind of made me think about this in a way that says, hey, the more that I can build this as a kind of proprietary element and stack, the better off I'm going to be over the long term.
What other forms of art can you or are you thinking of offering in the store? I mean, we got visual art. We got Paul. The collection is incredible. If a music artist comes along, is that something that lives in your store?
Yes. There's one of my favorite, well, I guess technically, yeah, I was in undergrad. He's a really great producer. Recently sold his catalog to one of the big private equity motherships. But he's got a whole catalog of stuff that he never pushed into his portfolio that he was under a label with. And so he is kind of conceiving how he wants to do something with that. There is photography that's going to happen next. That's the next kind of art medium. There is going to be, things like neon and painting, and a lot of wall-mounted work will kind of be the next, 4 to 6 months work. But then there's going to be kind of artifacts, like physical 3D things that a group out of the UK wants to do some work with this platform, and it's actually furniture.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of stuff. There's a high-end automotive group that has a vision for wanting to do something with a transportation device. So it's going to be broad ranging, and then it closes, obviously, as you know, there's going to be some film and TV stuff in there too.
Awesome.
One of the things about your work is that it automatically sits at the intersection of culture and commerce, art being, of course, a big aspect of culture. Now, as Black Futurist Podcast, we talk about the culture. And when we talk about the culture, we're talking about African American cultural mores, ideas, conceptions. Where does your work land with regard to the culture in general? What are some considerations you've thought about? Where does it land?
Well, first, it always kind of starts from a challenge that goes back to my favorite author, Ralph Ellison. There's the collective and there's the individual. And finding a bridge between the two is how you build culture, right? That there's something that's coming through you, that's being channeled through you as a member of the community, that it's a must that you figure out a way to make it happen before your time is up. So everything that I think about in terms of the types of work that I'm, kind of curating into this platform and going to be creating for it as well myself, is kind of coming from that duality negotiation of, well, this is me, these are my kind of traits and experiences and capabilities and kind of weaknesses and then things that I'm going to stay away from. I'm going to figure out a way to get, a good portion of the things that are in my woodshed of ideas and things, and find a way that they're hitting a cultural moment tonality, is what I'll call it. Where there's something in our times and or our previous kind of experiences that resonates, and try to align that with the moment using this tech stuff, using, the aesthetic kind of capabilities that I have, and try to get it out in that moment that ignites. So when I was doing stuff with advertising, we had this whole thing around phenomenon and another big word, but phenomenology, right? Like, you have an experience, you're looking at something, it's pulling something out of you and putting something back into you at the same time. And that's all reflective of the capital V culture, right? That you're on some sort of journey of looking backwards and forwards at the same time. And so my work, both in kind of the media space and even in the built world space, was always about the time continuum and trying to find things that weren't necessarily, let's say, dismissive of struggle and pain and strife, but was focused on how do we actually go forward and how do we actually create something new and how do we own what we create anew. That's a long ass way to answer your question, but those are the things that come to mind when I think about the question of culture and how I try to dig into it from my own kind of pathway to the collective pathway.
I want
Like
to know.
B always says, where does the brother from Cleveland fit in? And B, if you want to continue on that concept, of course I do.
I'm changing the subject slightly, and I want to know, like, you've got this incredible Paul Franks collection. I want to know why you chose this. How is it different than his previous works? I'm sure you got numbered and signed prints coming out. What is the device, the mechanism for stapling the physical to the digital entire universe? Meaning, like, if I give mine to my neighbor, I could still keep the tokens, et cetera, right? Or not? Like, what's supposed to happen and what are the challenges?
So that's a multi-part question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is, I got introduced to Paul 15 years ago now, and I'd seen the work in terms of like the apparel and other things, and I kind of understood him from a certain, alignment around my timeline of being in college when his stuff popped off, right? The guy who introduced us was a really incredible mentor of mine. He was a production designer. He was the first person I got to work on sets and things of note in Hollywood. The first project was actually a Janet Jackson video. So he was a big influence on me. And he passed away last year, and we've just been talking about a lot of different things, Paul and I, about, working on some stuff. But part of what we're commemorating is 1995. That's when I met the guy who introduced us. That's also when Paul started his brand.
Okay.
And so we looked at it and said, hey, there's a way to celebrate 30 years of this brand having staying power through all the ups and the downs and all that. People still have a good feeling for it. It's, as they say, big in Japan, right? That was actually one of the first places that it really took off. And we're now doing some stuff with a museum here dedicated to the Japanese American experience around it. So there's a lot of layers around why Paul and I have kind of worked on a lot of different endeavors, and this one was a way to really kind of culminate that with doing this collection and the things that'll follow. So in terms of the experience of ownership of the work, and or if you must sell it, the vault is going to facilitate peer-to-peer trading and sales, purchases. Part of the handoff is going to be that there's a condition report that goes along with the actual work.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to fill that out along with the DPC and the number and some photos and so forth as a bundle that will go over to the buyer, who can then inspect it and see it. And yes, I want to go buy it. In your case, you pointed out they're just across the hallway from you, right? Ideally, people would sell the whole bundle, physical and digital.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what we know about humans, some are going to be different from what we envision. I'm personally okay with that. If the collector who's buying from them says, hey, I don't even care about that extra money that you can earn over there for some reason. I just want the physical work in my space, and I'm good. Okay, fine. You came up, right? Most likely, though, people are going to look at it if they're in the vault, say, no. All that infrastructure is the real value of this work of art in the digital and the financial space. They don't get separated for me to buy it. There's some details around the mechanics. I don't want to get into too much of it, but I'll just put a word out there. Steganography is part of the image protection.
Google's steganography privately and secretly off camera. I hear it. I don't even know.
One for me.
What is steganography, sir?
It's an encryption technique.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good one. Speaking of encryption, we keep on talking about quantum computing coming to the market. And if we're talking about encryption, right, Where are we in that conversation regarding, the potential for quantum computing to be a thing that's purchasable by cycles, and what does it mean for all the secrets on the planet moving forward?
Well, you saw Google's announcement a few days ago.
What'd they say?
They said effectively to all you Bitcoin maxis, there's less time than we even said in terms of not being able to have quantum breaks of the SHA 256 model and a few other encryption models that are out there. So they're saying basically within the next couple of months that if they wanted to, they can totally break the Bitcoin cryptographic network and Ethereum and several others. So there's a lot of scrambling going on right now.
Given the nature of, you talked about like North Korea and hacking and drawing value from crypto projects. First of all, the messaging that comes out of North Korea looks like a bunch of people sitting at fifth grade desks with pencil sharpeners, in a big room. Just clearly it's not that. They clearly have the internet. But how does this impact the nature of warfare? Quantum computing, that is.
It pretty much takes it into a whole different state of existence. What you see about the kind of key global players that have had traditional excellence in computing and cryptography, they all have their capabilities in that zone. So the question is, what's not happening with it right now? Because they're only telling us what they're telling us at the surface level to confirm that things are happening in the background. So I would say this next 2 years, there's going to be pretty extreme destruction of proprietary databases and data sets to a degree we haven't ever seen before. What does that do, right? We're seeing the fallout of things like, the 2% of the Epstein files where 98 are probably video, but they're more than accessible and could be presented very quickly with systems like that. So I just think that we're going to go back to some very basic principles about if it's digital, it's able to be seen by any and everybody at any time. So if you don't want that, don't do that.
Makes sense. I don't want to derail our conversation about Soq Wallet, but it kind of organically was coming out of my brain that way. What have we not said about Soq Wallet that we definitely want to touch on before we switch to the more obscure topics?
Well, I just want people to check it out, but also come back in the next month or so, because there's going to be some new collections that will be appearing. There's going to be a college collection. This is breaking news, Mr. Moore, and
That's
your
awesome.
world there. Your world there is going to be one of the vanguard.
Nice.
Along with a few others. So there's some fun stuff that's going to come from Paul on that front, but also in the photography space. So
that's incredible. Who's on your list? Like, if you ask me, hey, B, who do you want to have on the show? I immediately say Neil deGrasse Tyson. I want to bring him on. Do you have a list of whose art you want to create a collection for in Soq Wallet?
Well, I have the list of the next 5 for sure that I'm going to be doing stuff with. But in terms of the archetype, I really want to have it be somebody that's, or several someones that are just about at the kind of like apogee of awareness. But this is going to be something for them to kind of like get to that higher level, particularly around their business operations.
So not like, Gary Busey.
He is not on the roster. No. There's a few others that are also not there.
Right.
Note.
Got it.
I am at this point really just listening because the technical side is stretching me. And Mer, you've done a really good job of presenting, and obviously you've done this and you've had to do it over and over. Like you in here using words like Stegosaurus and Megatron and stuff that, just regular ass people just like, I don't get. So you've done an excellent job of breaking it down and keeping it at a level that stretches my knowledge and understanding of these types of things without breaking my brain, right? So most of it, and I think of myself as a teacher, number one thing I am as a student. So most of it is just really listening and understanding. So one piece that you addressed, because I guess from, what you're talking about, Howard is going to be or Howard folks are going to be a part of some of this next rollout and things that are, that you're engaging with? Because that was going to be my question, like to follow up on the notion of the culture and where it goes. And so to me, that speaks to someone who is thinking about those things and who is purposefully responding to and literally centering the culture and aspects of the culture, in a thoughtful way. So that's my long
Thanks,
ass winded
man.
way of saying you answered the questions I got. So
I appreciate
about
it, man.
that.
I appreciate it.
Is that a "That's What I Do" shirt, Maurice?
Close enough. So I wore this purposefully. I'll raise up a little bit. I wore this purposefully because, of course, this is one of those pieces of artwork.
There you go.
It's one of those pieces of artwork, if I'm not mistaken, and we can look this up and people are going to, hit us up in the comments or whatever. But if I am not mistaken, it was something that a kid did, like an elementary school kid made this drawing. And it's just, Barack Obama playing basketball. I think it was closer to the time when he was president. And it blew up. People were like, we love this art. And so to me, it made me think about exactly what we're talking about. And Lemaire, so like this would be the type of thing on one hand, so now it gets on t-shirts and, hopefully proceeds, partially went to maybe helping this kid's classroom or whatever happened. And maybe I just created that lore on my own. I think that's what happened. But even if it's not, it just made me think of this is the type of artwork, right? The type of place that could be encompassed by Soq Wallet, right? Like here is this entire genre of fifth grader art. And, because fifth graders come up with dope shit like this, right? Like here's Barack Obama as the Jordan outline, right? So something that speaks to the culture and something that, centers us. Barack Obama is ostensibly one of our heroes, right? So this was very, very purposeful. And yeah, it can be funneled into the notion of when Barack let it gooseneck and had to pull his mask down, like, that's what I do. That's what I do. So yeah, absolutely. It's very, very thoughtful and specific choice. Nice. And something that speaks to the type of thing that I would go onto a Soq Wallet looking for, right? I would go onto a Soq Wallet and be like, where the black people stuff at? And let me find the stuff that speaks to me, right? Let me find there it is right there. Let me buy that. Let me incorporate that into the stuff on my website, right? So it's the way I thought about it.
Right. So Lemaire, the model is about curated collections. It's not about a public utility.
Yes.
Right. That's awesome.
Yes.
Very good.
So there's an intention to kind of amplify cultural success.
Nice. So if there was a storage unit that had a bunch of Kobe's left shoes and you got a call about it, is that a thing too? Because you'd be like, hey, man, I got 80 game-worn Kobe left shoes and we want to make that into a collection on Soq Wallet. Is that a go or no?
Could be. Depends. If it's Vanessa, right?
If it's Vanessa.
Yeah. And as you know, during Origin Days, we had a project sort of in that realm with her. But it depends on the vision of the holder. What do they want to have happen when people actually acquire it? What I want to make sure is that these are things that establish value, retain, and extend value for people. So I was just looking back to the acquisition that Eddie Murphy did of the painting that was at the beginning of Good Times, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And everything that happens after an artist is gone or after a creator is gone. But to Mo's point, we got people right here, right now, ages 10, that are doing amazing things and things that are really evocative, that we should find a way to establish that value while they're here and have the culture celebrate that.
So we want everyone listening to go visit SOQWallet.com, SOQWallet.com, and peruse the Paul Frank collection. Look at your wall. There's probably a space, probably like a nice 24 by 24 frame Fozzie Bear probably could go right there. Or what's the one the from the horror flick, Pinhead? That's pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of like pop culture tie-ins, and I have a ton of questions that really are outside of this conversation, just about like how did you choose the different layers that would go over Paul's stuff? Why all over just the one character, knowing he has multiple characters? But that could be a whole second conversation.
Well, I'll give you a couple of bullet points and then one other thing to consider for the audience. So Julius was the one that kicked it off for him.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually making actual wallets. He was sewing wallets and giving them to friends and said, you know what, man, I need something like Mickey Mouse. So I want to do a monkey, and drew that up and stitched it, and there it was. And he built up a whole backstory around it. If you look at that time period of the 50s and 60s of the space age, the name Julius was a very popular one.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole thing around space and all that stuff that goes with him too. Anyway, so there's totally about, I think, somewhere around 40 total characters in the Julius and Friends family, and they have a little, community that they live in called Plan Pines and all that. And then he's got another kind of Catalina Islands and Plan Pines thing of other characters. But we're going to be doing things with those other characters too, and they'll actually kind of show up on some of the university collection and other things. But the one other thing I want to mention also is that there's SOQWallet.vip, and that's a site for people to go and sign up to effectively be on a communication list for the new releases before they go on to .com. They'll be there for about a week, so you can go and kind of get things beforehand, because there'll be, limited edition one-on-one things and other things from artists that are going to come down the line a little bit later. And there's also going to be events and virtual kind of meet and greet things that people will be doing, and some other rewards based activities. So if they're so inclined, SOQWallet.vip, sign up there, right? Because we'll be doing a lot of communications through that. And there's newsletter and other basics, but that one's also a good thing to try out.
Mer Walker, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you coming through. This has been great, and hopefully the first of many times you'll join us.
Absolutely. I would love to come back with a couple of the creators and have y'all chat with them about what they're doing and their new collections, and some of the stuff that Mo will want to buy is going to be coming from those people. So.
Oh, yeah, man. 100.
All right. Thank you both.